Jack Miller stood at the viewing deck of the starship Horizon *, his heart beating fast as he watched the blue-green planet of Zarkila grow larger. After 15 years as a park ranger on Earth and 5 more studying alien biology, this was the moment he had been waiting for. The first human diplomatic mission to the Zarkel system was about to land, and Jack was one of the few chosen to make first real contact. "All team members report to the shuttle bay," came Captain Susan Wright's voice over the speakers. Jack picked up his small bag of personal items and joined the others heading to the lower deck. His friend Olivia Carter nudged him with her elbow. "Nervous?" she asked. "Excited," Jack replied, running a hand through his short brown hair. "We've been talking to them for 20 years, but nobody has actually seen a Zarkel in person." The shuttle ride down was smooth. Jack looked out the window at the strange landscapes below. Forests that seemed to glow slightly, and mountains with odd curved shapes. Everything on this world was both familiar and not quite right. When the doors opened, Jack smelled the air of another world for the first time. It was sweet and sharp at the same time, like pine trees and citrus mixed together. The gravity was slightly less than Earth's, making him feel lighter on his feet. And then he saw them. The Zarkel. They were tall, with sleek bodies covered in short fur ranging from gold to deep blue. Their faces reminded Jack of Earth's big cats, with wide eyes that glowed slightly and had vertical pupils. But they stood upright on 2 legs and had 4-fingered hands with retractable claws. The leader of the welcoming party stepped forward. "I am Reltan, elder of the Northern Lakes clan. We welcome humans to our world." The translation devices the team wore converted the sounds into perfect English, though Jack could hear the original language, a mix of purrs, clicks, and musical notes. Captain Wright performed the formal greeting they had practiced, and soon the humans were being led toward a collection of curved buildings that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. Jack walked beside a younger Zarkel with silver-blue fur who had been assigned as their guide. "I am Krita," the alien said. "I study life forms, like you do." "Nice to meet you," Jack said with a smile. "I have so many questions about your wildlife." "And I have many about yours," Krita replied. "Is it true you have animals called bears?" As they walked through the settlement, Jack noticed how the Zarkel moved, graceful and careful, always aware of their surroundings. Children, or cubs as they called them, played in specially designed areas, watched by multiple adults. The diplomatic meetings began right away in a large round building with a ceiling that showed the sky above. Jack sat quietly, taking notes and observing. He noticed how the Zarkel respected their elders, but also listened carefully when anyone spoke. During a break, Jack stepped outside for some fresh air. He saw an elderly Zarkel with dark gray fur struggling to climb some steps while carrying a container of water. Without thinking, Jack hurried over. "May I help you?" he asked, reaching for the container. The elder Zarkel looked startled, ears flattening against his head. Jack remembered too late that offering help to an elder without being asked was considered rude in their culture. "I apologize," Jack said quickly, stepping back. "I didn't mean to offend." The elder studied him for a moment. Then his ears relaxed. "You humans help each other this way?" "Yes, often," Jack explained. "Interesting," the elder said, then surprised Jack by holding out the container. "I accept your help, human Jack Miller." As Jack carried the water, several younger Zarkel watched with curious expressions. He didn't know it then, but this small act had already begun to change how they saw humans. Later that evening, Krita approached Jack. "Elder Vrelanan spoke of you. Tomorrow, would you join my research team in the Luminous Forest? It is rare for outsiders to be invited there." Jack couldn't believe his luck. "I would be honored," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. That night, as Jack looked up at unfamiliar stars from his sleeping quarters, he felt that he was exactly where he was meant to be. He didn't know that soon everything would change, and his name would become part of Zarkel legend forever. The morning light on Zarkila had a strange purple tint that made the dew on plants sparkle like tiny jewels. Jack followed Krita along a winding path that led deep into the luminous forest. 3 other Zarkel scientists walked with them, their fur colors ranging from sandy gold to deep blue. "Our people have lived beside this forest for thousands of years," Krita explained. "It gives us medicine, food, and shelter. We protect it, and it protects us." Jack noticed how the trees seemed to glow faintly from within, their bark smooth, and their leaves shaped like stars. "The bioluminescence is amazing," he said, touching a trunk gently. "We have some glowing fungi on Earth, but nothing like this." As they walked, Jack saw small creatures darting between trees. They looked like a mix between squirrels and birds, with scaly tails and tiny feathers covering their bodies. "Trilka," said Nevran, one of the other scientists. "They spread tree seeds, very important to the forest." Jack took careful notes and pictures with his small device. Everything fascinated him. The 6-legged insects that built spiral webs, the flowers that closed when someone walked near them, and especially the way the Zarkil moved through it all with deep respect. Around midday, they reached a clearing where several Zarkel adults were teaching cubs. The young Zarkel, smaller with fluffier fur, practiced climbing and identifying plants. "This is a learning circle," Krita said quietly. "Cubs come here to learn forest ways. It is rare for outsiders to see this." One of the cubs noticed Jack and stared with wide, curious eyes. Then it nudged another cub, and soon all of them were looking at the human. An adult Zarkel approached. "I am Shrelvin, teacher of the Northern Lakes clan. The cubs are curious about you, Jack Miller. Would you share a story of Earth with them?" Jack was surprised but honored. He sat on a fallen log as the cubs gathered around him. Their ears perked forward in attention. "On Earth," Jack began, "we have creatures called wolves. They live in families called packs, and they take care of each other, just like your clans do." The cubs listened as Jack described how wolves hunt, how they raise their pups, and how some humans work to protect them when they were in danger. He showed pictures on his device, and the cubs made soft chirping sounds of amazement. After the story, one small cub with silvery fur approached Jack and held out a shiny stone. Jack accepted it with a small bow, the way he had seen adult Zarkil do. "That is Mirila, my daughter," Krita said with pride in her voice. "She has given you a friendship stone. This is a great honor." As they continued their journey, Krita explained more about Zarkel's society. "Our clans are connected by life bonds, promises to protect and support each other. Every adult is responsible for all cubs, not just their own." Jack thought about this. That's similar to some human cultures that say it takes a village to raise a child. Krita's ears perked up. "Yes, we believe this too." Later that afternoon, as they collected plant samples near a stream, Jack noticed Krita checking a small device often, her ears flicking back in what he had learned was a sign of worry. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Krita hesitated. "Our sensors have detected unusual movement patterns in the north. Animals not seen in these parts for many seasons are moving south." "What kind of animals?" "Vex more," Krita said, her voice lower. "Large predators with 6 limbs and claws that can cut through tree trunks. They normally stay in the cold mountains. Why would they be moving south? The climate has been changing. The north grows colder, but they should not come this far." She put away her device. "The council will discuss it tonight. You and your team are invited to a ceremony in the heart of the forest tomorrow. It happens only once every 10 years when the twin moons align." Jack felt honored but also concerned about the predators. As they headed back to the settlement, the forest seemed different now. Still beautiful, but with hidden dangers. The sun began to set, turning the glowing trees into lanterns of blue and purple light. What Jack didn't know was that soon he would face those dangers head-on, and his life would never be the same. The next morning, Jack woke early. Today would be special, the ceremony of the twin moons that happened only once every 10 years. He packed his small bag with water, some tools, and emergency supplies. Old habits from his ranger days died hard. Jack met the group at the edge of the settlement. Captain Susan and 2 other humans were there along with Krita and several Zarkel elders. "We are honored you will join us for the moon gathering," said Elder Reltan. "The path will be long but beautiful." As they walked deeper into the forest than Jack had gone before, the trees grew larger and their glow stronger. Jack noticed that Krita kept looking at her tracking device, her ears flicking with worry. Still concerned about those predators, Jack asked quietly. "Yes, they are still moving south, but slowly. The elders say there is no danger yet," Krita replied. Around midday, they stopped at a small stream. Jack watched as Zarkel cubs played in the shallow water, their parents watching nearby. Mirila, Krita's daughter, spotted Jack and bounded over. "Human Jack, look what I found," she said through the translator, holding up what looked like a blue stone. "That's beautiful," Jack said, kneeling down to her level. "What is it?" "Moon crystal," Mirila explained proudly. "It helps find the way home when lost." Jack smiled. "That's very useful. I use a compass on Earth." "What is compass?" Mirila asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Jack took out a small emergency compass from his pack and showed her how it worked. The little cub was fascinated and called her friends over. Soon Jack was surrounded by Zarkel cubs, all eager to see the strange human tool. Krita watched with interest. "You are good with cubs," she said when the young ones had gone back to play. "I used to teach kids about nature back on Earth," Jack explained. "Children are curious no matter what planet they're from." The group continued their journey. As the day went on, the forest changed. The trees grew taller and their trunks twisted in odd patterns. The ground became rocky, with ancient stone formations rising from the earth. "These are the old stones," explained Velinor, one of the elders. "Our ancestors built them to mark the path to the sacred clearing." Jack studied the stones. They had carvings that reminded him of Earth's ancient cultures, spirals, animal shapes, and star patterns. He took pictures with his device, feeling like an explorer from long ago. By late afternoon, dark clouds began to gather overhead. The air felt heavy and electric. "A storm is coming," said Elder Mreltan, looking up with concern. "Not expected. We must hurry." They quickened their pace. Jack noticed that the adults were gathering the cubs closer, forming protective circles around them as they walked. The wind picked up, making the glowing trees sway. Suddenly, Captain Susan's communication device beeped. She frowned at the screen. "The ship says there's a severe atmospheric disturbance forming. They're losing the ability to track us. The storms can interfere with technology," Krita explained. "But the sacred clearing is not far. There are stone shelters there." The first drops of rain fell, purplish liquid that sizzled slightly when it hit the ground. Thunder rumbled across the sky, making the cubs huddle closer to the adults. "We cannot turn back now," said Elder Mreltan. "We must reach the stone shelters before the full storm arrives." They moved faster, almost running now. Jack helped carry one of the smaller cubs who was struggling to keep up. The rain became heavier, and lightning flashed with strange colors, green and blue instead of white. Ahead, Jack could see large stone structures. They looked ancient but sturdy, like small temples with thick walls and roofs. "There," Krita pointed, "the sacred clearing and the shelters." They rushed toward the buildings as the storm intensified. Just as they reached the first shelter, a massive crack of thunder shook the ground. Lightning struck a tall tree nearby, splitting it in two. The Zarkel quickly moved the cubs inside. Jack helped, making sure everyone was safe. Outside, the storm raged, but within the thick stone walls, they were protected. What no one realized was that far to the north, The same storm had disturbed something else, the hunting grounds of the Vex Moor. The predators were now moving faster, driven by the weather and hunger, straight toward the sacred clearing. The storm grew worse through the night. Rain pounded on the stone roof of the shelter, and strange purple lightning flashed across the sky. Inside, the Zarkel elders tried to comfort the cubs while discussing what to do. "The ceremony cannot happen in this storm," said Elder Mreltan, her ears flat against her head. "And we cannot return to the settlement until it passes." Jack checked his communication device. No signal. The storm must be blocking it. Captain Susan nodded. "The ship can't reach us either. We need to wait it out." As dawn approached, the rain finally slowed, but a new problem emerged. Water rushed down from the hills, creating a fast-moving stream between their shelter and the path back to the settlement. Elder Velinor studied the rising water. "This is not good. The old texts speak of great floods in this area. We must move to higher ground until the waters recede." The group gathered their supplies and prepared to move. Jack helped pack food and water, while Crete organized the cubs. The smaller ones looked scared but stayed quiet and followed instructions. "There is another sacred place on the hill," said Elder Reltan, pointing to a wooded ridge in the distance. "We will be safe there." They set out carefully, the adults carrying the smallest cubs. The ground was slippery, and Jack used his old hiking skills to test each step before moving forward. He helped others find secure footing, earning grateful looks from the Zarkel. They had almost reached the halfway point when disaster struck. A loud crack echoed through the forest as the ground beneath them shifted. A section of the path collapsed into the rushing water below. Jack watched in horror as the group was split in two. He found himself on one side with 3 cubs, including Murila, while the rest of the group was on the other side. The gap between them was now too wide to cross. "Jack!" Krita called from across the divide, her voice barely audible over the rushing water. "Protect them. We will find another way around." "I will," Jack shouted back. "Don't worry." The water continued to rise, and Jack knew they needed to move quickly. "Come on," he said to the cubs. "We need to get to higher ground." The cubs looked terrified, but followed him. The smallest, a golden-furred cub named Larisol, was shaking with fear. Jack picked him up and carried him. "It's going to be okay," Jack said calmly. "I was a ranger on Earth. I know how to handle situations like this." Murila looked up at him with trust in her eyes. "What should we do, Human Jack?" "First, we find a safe place. Then we wait for the others to reach us," Jack explained simply. He led them up the hill, moving slowly and carefully. The forest was different here, darker, with strange sounds coming from the shadows. Jack felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. These cubs were precious to the Zarkel, and now their safety depended on him. They reached a small cave in the hillside, just as rain began to fall again. Jack checked it carefully before letting the cubs enter. It was dry and seemed safe. "We'll stay here until the storm passes," he told them. As darkness fell, Jack built a small fire near the cave entrance using his emergency fire starter and dry wood he found inside the cave. The cubs huddled close to him, seeking comfort. "Tell us an Earth story," asked Murila. Like before, Jack smiled and began telling them about how animals on Earth survive storms and floods. The story seemed to calm them, and soon 2 of the cubs fell asleep against his side. But Murila stayed awake, her ears constantly moving, listening to the sounds outside. "What's wrong?" Jack asked quietly. "I hear something," she whispered. "Not the rain. Something else." Jack listened carefully. At first, he heard nothing unusual, just the rain and wind. Then he caught it. A low, rumbling growl unlike anything he had heard on this planet before. The cub's ears flattened in fear. "Vex Moor," whispered Larisol, trembling against Jack's side. Jack's heart raced, but he kept his face calm for the cub's sake. He reached for his laser cutter, the only weapon he had, only to find it dead. The strange magnetic properties of the storm must have affected it. Outside, the growling came again, closer this time. In the dim light of the fire, Jack saw large shadows moving between the trees. The Vexmore had found them. Jack moved quickly, his mind racing. He pushed the cubs deeper into the cave and grabbed a long, thick branch from their firewood pile. "Stay behind me," he whispered to the cubs. "No matter what happens, stay hidden." The growling outside grew louder. In the faint light from the fire, Jack could see a massive shadow moving toward the cave entrance. His heart pounded, but years of ranger training kicked in. He had faced bears and mountain lions on Earth. This was different, but the basics were the same. Protect the vulnerable, stay calm, use the environment. Jack quickly used his knife to sharpen the end of the branch into a crude spear. He grabbed stones from the cave floor and put them in his pockets. "Human Jack," whispered Mirilla, her voice shaking. "Vexmore can see in the dark better than we can." "Thank you for telling me," Jack said. He looked around and spotted glowing fungi on the cave walls, similar to what he had seen in the forest. He quickly picked some and rubbed it on his face and arms. The blue-green glow was faint, but might help him see and be seen in the darkness. The first Vexmore appeared at the cave entrance. It was nothing like Jack had imagined. The creature stood taller than him on 6 powerful legs. Its body was covered in thick scales that shifted colors like oil on water. What shocked Jack most was its face. 3 sets of glowing red eyes above a mouth full of teeth like curved knives. It sniffed the air and snarled, saliva dripping from its jaws. Behind Jack, the cubs pressed themselves against the cave wall, trembling. "Hey," Jack shouted, stepping forward with his spear. "Get back." The Vexmore seemed surprised by his voice, but didn't retreat. Instead, it lowered its head and prepared to charge. Jack didn't wait. He threw a stone hard at the creature's face, hitting it between its eyes. The Vexmore roared in pain and anger. As it lunged forward, Jack dove to the side, jabbing his spear at the creature's flank. The sharpened end scraped against the scales but didn't penetrate deeply. The Vexmore spun with surprising speed, its clawed foot catching Jack's arm and tearing his sleeve. Pain shot through Jack's arm, but adrenaline kept him moving. He grabbed a burning branch from the fire and swung it at the predator. The Vexmore backed away from the flames, hissing. Jack used the moment to glance back at the cubs. "Is there more than one?" he asked quickly. "Yes," whimpered Larry Soul. "They hunt in pairs." As if on cue, a second Vexmore appeared behind the first, slightly smaller but just as deadly. Jack knew he couldn't fight both head-on. He needed a plan. Looking up, he noticed the cave ceiling was loose in places, with rocks that might fall if hit hard enough. "When I say run," he whispered to the cubs, "go deeper into the cave. There might be another way out." The 2 predators stalked forward slowly, growling low. Jack stood his ground, the fire branch in one hand, spear in the other. He waited until they were both under the weakest part of the ceiling. Then he struck. Jack threw his spear with all his strength, not at the creatures but at the cave ceiling above them. Rocks crashed down, hitting the larger Vexmore on its back. The creature screamed in rage and pain. "Run," Jack shouted to the cubs, and they darted deeper into the cave. The smaller Vexmore leaped over the fallen rocks, heading straight for Jack. He had no time to think. Jack rolled forward, under the creature's leap, and came up behind it. As the Vexmore turned, Jack grabbed its tail and pulled with all his might. The predator lost balance and crashed into the cave wall. Jack didn't waste the opportunity. He grabbed his knife and drove it into the softer scales under the creature's jaw. The Vexmore thrashed wildly, its claws slashing Jack's chest before it finally went still. Blood soaked through Jack's shirt, but he couldn't stop. The larger Vexmore was digging its way through the fallen rocks, more angry than injured. Jack staggered deeper into the cave, following the cubs. His body ached, blood dripping from his wounds, but a fierce determination kept him moving. Those cubs were his responsibility now, and he would protect them with his life if necessary. Behind him, the surviving Vexmore roared in rage, the sound echoing through the cave like a promise of death. Deep in the cave, Jack found the three cubs huddled together in a small chamber. Pale blue light came from glowing crystals in the walls, enough to see by. Jack pressed his hand against his bleeding chest and tried to smile for the cubs. "Are you okay?" he asked them, checking each one carefully. The cubs nodded, their eyes wide with fear and amazement. Mirila stepped forward and touched Jack's arm gently. "You are hurt, human Jack," she said, her voice trembling. "The blood. There is much." Jack tore strips from his shirt and quickly made bandages. "I'll be fine," he assured them, though the pain was getting worse. "We need to keep moving. That second Vexmore will break through soon." As they explored deeper, Jack was surprised to find that the cave had many tunnels, almost like a maze. The glowing crystals grew more numerous, lighting their way with soft blue light. "These tunnels are old," said Trevnar, the third cub who had been mostly quiet until now. "They are in our old stories. The way under the mountain." "Do the stories say if there's another way out?" Jack asked hopefully. Trevnar's ears flattened. "I don't remember. I'm sorry." From behind them came the echoing roar of the Vexmore. It had broken through the rocks and was following their scent. Jack's mind raced. Then he noticed something strange about the glowing crystals. They seemed brighter when the cubs got close to them, and dimmer when they moved away. "The crystals," he said suddenly. "They respond to you." Mirila looked at the wall. "Yes, the light stones glow for Zarkel. They are part of our bond with the planet." Jack had an idea. "Can the Vexmore see the glow?" "Yes," Larisol answered. "They hunt by following light in the dark seasons." "Perfect," Jack said. He quickly explained his plan to the cubs. Minutes later, when the Vexmore reached a place where the tunnel split in 3 directions, it paused and sniffed the air. Then it saw a faint blue glow down the left tunnel and rushed that way. But there were no cubs there. Only their fur stuck to glowing crystals that Jack had collected and placed carefully. The real cubs were with Jack in the right tunnel, moving as quietly as possible. Far above, in the Zarkel settlement, something strange was happening. The parents of the missing cubs suddenly felt a strong connection through their telepathic bond. They couldn't see what was happening, but they felt their cubs' fear and their growing trust in the human protecting them. "The human fights for our cubs," Elder Mreltan said with wonder. "Against the Vexmore. Barehanded." Word spread quickly through the settlement. The storm was beginning to clear, and rescue parties formed immediately. Krita led the first group, her face set with determination to reach her daughter and the brave human who was risking his life. Back in the caves, Jack and the cubs found themselves in a large chamber with a small underground river flowing through it. Jack knelt and drank, then cleaned his wounds. The cold water helped with the pain, but he was getting weaker from blood loss. "We'll rest here for a bit," he told the cubs. But their rest was short. The angry roar of the Vexmore echoed through the tunnels again. It had discovered the trick and was back on their trail. "It's coming," whispered Mirila, her ears flat against her head. Jack stood up, ignoring the pain. "Then we need to be ready for it." He looked around and spotted large stalactites hanging from the ceiling above the chamber entrance. An idea formed in his mind. Dangerous, but possibly their only chance. "I need you 3 to hide behind those rocks," Jack said, pointing to a pile of boulders near the river. "No matter what happens, stay hidden until I say it's safe." "What will you do?" asked Larisol, clutching Jack's pant leg. Jack picked up a heavy rock. "I'm going to teach this predator that humans aren't easy prey." The cubs looked at him with a mix of fear and trust. Mirila suddenly pressed her forehead against Jack's hand, a Zarkel gesture of deep respect. "Be careful, human Jack," she whispered. As the cubs hid, Jack positioned himself near the entrance, rock in hand. The growling grew louder. Jack's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He had faced death before as a ranger. He would not let these cubs down. The Vex Moor appeared at the entrance, its red eyes fixed on Jack with pure hatred. The Vex Moor lunged into the chamber, its 6 legs moving with terrifying speed. Jack waited until the last possible moment, then threw his rock, not at the creature, but at the base of a large stalactite hanging above the entrance. The rock hit with perfect accuracy, and with a loud crack, the stone spear broke free from the ceiling. The stalactite crashed down onto the Vex Moor's back. The predator shrieked in pain but wasn't stopped. It shook off the broken stone and continued toward Jack, limping but still deadly. Jack grabbed a sharp piece of the broken stalactite and held it like a knife. His arms trembled with exhaustion, and blood soaked through his makeshift bandages. Still, he stood his ground between the predator and the hidden cubs. "Come on then," Jack muttered. "Let's finish this." The Vex Moor circled Jack slowly, looking for an opening. Jack noticed it favored its right side where the stalactite had struck. He feinted to the left, and when the creature moved to intercept, Jack drove his stone knife into its injured side. The predator howled and lashed out with its clawed front leg, catching Jack across his back. Pain exploded through his body as he fell to his knees. The Vex Moor loomed over him, ready for the killing blow. From their hiding place, the cubs watched in horror. Without thinking, Muriela darted out and shouted in her native language. The Vex Moor turned toward the sound, momentarily distracted. It was all Jack needed. With his last strength, he drove the stone knife upward into the soft underside of the Vex Moor's throat. The creature thrashed violently, its claws slashing Jack's shoulder before it finally collapsed. Jack fell back, breathing hard, his vision blurring. The cubs rushed to his side, their small paws pressing against his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. "Human Jack," Muriela cried. "Don't sleep. Please don't sleep." Through the pain, Jack managed to smile. "It's okay. You're safe now." "We need to help him," Trevnar said urgently. "The healing moss, like the elders use." The cubs searched the chamber and found patches of glowing moss growing near the underground river. They carefully placed it on Jack's worst wounds. The moss seemed to stick to his skin, and a cool sensation spread through his body, dulling the pain. "Thank you," Jack whispered. He knew he had lost too much blood. Without proper medical help, he might not survive. But at least the cubs were safe. That was what mattered. Outside the caves, the rescue parties moved through the forest. Crete had led one group, following the telepathic connection to her daughter. The storm had finally passed, leaving the forest dripping and quiet. "They are underground," Crete had told the others. "In the old tunnels." Elder Mrelten, who had insisted on joining the search, looked troubled. "The old tunnels lead to the stone circle. It is a sacred place, but dangerous. Many entrances, easy to get lost." "Muriela is afraid, but also proud," Krita said, sensing her daughter's emotions. "The human fights for them. He has killed 2 Vex Moor." The Zarkel looked at each other in amazement. Even their best hunters rarely took down a single Vex Moor, let alone 2. And this human had done it with primitive weapons. In the underground chamber, Jack struggled to stay conscious. The healing moss helped, but he needed real medical attention. He tried to stand but fell back, too weak to move. "We need to find a way out," he told the cubs. "Your parents will be looking for you." Muriela touched Jack's hand gently. "We won't leave you." Suddenly, Larry Soul's ears perked up. "Listen." In the distance, they could hear voices calling. The rescue party was getting closer. "They found us," Trevnar said excitedly. Jack smiled weakly. "Go. Call to them. Show them the way." But the cubs refused to leave his side. Instead, Muriela began to make a high, trilling sound that echoed through the tunnels, a Zarkel distress call taught to all cubs. The rescue party heard the call and moved faster through the tunnels. Krite ran ahead, following her daughter's voice. When they finally reached the chamber, the Zarkel stopped in shock at what they saw. 2 dead Vexmore predators, 3 unharmed cubs, and in the center, covered in blood but still conscious, a single human who had done the impossible. "He saved us," Muriela told her mother as Krita rushed forward. "Human Jack fought the monsters for us." As the Zarkel healers carefully moved Jack onto a stretcher, Elder Riltan knelt beside him. "Rest now, brave one," the elder said softly. "You have earned your place in our stories forever." Jack opened his eyes slowly. He was lying in a round room with walls that glowed softly. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. Then it all came back. The storm, the cave, the Vexmore, the cubs. He tried to sit up, but gentle hands pressed him back down. "They are safe, Jack Miller. Thanks to you." It was Krita, sitting beside his bed. "You have been asleep for 3 days." Jack relaxed, relieved. He noticed his chest and shoulder were covered in a clear gel that glowed slightly blue. The pain was gone, and new pink skin was already forming over his wounds. "Our healing gel," Krita explained, seeing his curiosity. "It works well on humans, it seems." The door opened, and Muriela rushed in, followed by Larry Sol and Trevnar. The cubs chirped happily when they saw Jack awake. "Human Jack." Muriela jumped onto the edge of his bed. "You're better." Jack smiled, his heart warming at the sight of the cubs, safe and well. "Thanks to your quick thinking with that healing moss in the cave." Elder Mriltan entered the room, followed by Captain Susan and the other humans from the Horizon *. Everyone looked at Jack with expressions of respect and wonder. "Jack Miller," said the elder in a formal voice, "a council of elders has met. What you did for our cubs goes beyond courage. It shows the true spirit of your species." Captain Susan stepped forward. "The Zarkel have shared the story with us, taking on 2 Vexmore with nothing but sticks and stones. That's going in my report as the craziest, bravest thing I've ever heard." Jack felt his face grow warm with embarrassment. "I just did what anyone would do to protect children." "Not anyone," said Krita softly. "Not even all Zarkel would face Vexmore without weapons." 1 week later, Jack stood in the center of the Zarkel's great meeting hall. He was fully healed thanks to their advanced medicine. The entire settlement had gathered for a special ceremony. Elder Mriltan raised her hands for silence. "Today we honor Jack Miller of Earth. He protected our cubs when they were in danger. He fought the Vexmore with nothing but his hands and his courage. The council has decided Jack Miller will be the first human to join the Zarkel clan." Krita stepped forward, holding a small glowing crystal on a chain. "My clan welcomes you, Jack Miller. From this day, you are Zar Jalamir, protector who walks between worlds." As Krita placed the crystal around his neck, Jack felt a strange warmth spread through his body. The crystal glowed brighter, responding to him as it did to the Zarkel. Muriela and the other cubs he had saved came forward, each placing a colored mark on Jack's hand, the Zarkel sign of a life debt. That night, at a great feast, Jack learned how his story had already spread. The Zarkel were natural storytellers, and tales of the human who fought Vexmore barehanded to save cubs were being shared across the planet. "They're adding details already," Captain Susan said with a laugh. "I heard one version where you picked up a Vexmore and threw it across the cave." Jack smiled. "You know how stories grow." 3 months later, when it was time for the Horizon to return to Earth, Jack stood at the shuttle bay, saying goodbye to Krita and Muriela. "Will you come back?" Muriela asked, her eyes sad. "Of course," Jack promised. "I'm part of your clan now, remember." Krita handed him a data crystal. "Our council has approved a permanent human research station here. They ask that you lead it." Jack couldn't believe it. "I would be honored." As the shuttle took off, Jack looked down at the Zarkel settlement growing smaller below. He touched the crystal around his neck that marked him as part of their clan. 5 years later, the research station had grown into a thriving community of humans and Zarkel working together. Jack, now fluent in the Zarkel language, often took new human arrivals to see the monument in the Great Hall, 2 stone vex more with a human figure standing between them, and 3 cubs sheltered behind. The inscription, written in both languages, simply read, Jack Miller, Zar Jelmer, who taught us that true strength comes not from claws or weapons, but from the heart's courage to protect others. And so a human became legend among the stars, not through conquest or technology, but through the oldest and strongest power in any world, the will to protect the innocent, even at the cost of one's own life.